Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Jakarta, and he's not just signing trade papers. He's talking about a port, a small port on a small Indonesian island, sitting right next to one of the most important waterways on earth. It's called Sabang. It is located barely 100 miles from India's own Great Nicobar project. And most importantly, it sits right at the mouth of the critical Strait of Malacca, the energy lifeline of China. So why does India want a foothold on both sides of the Malacca Strait? What does this mean for the ships carrying China's oil through the narrow passage every single day? Is India quietly building the power to watch or even choke Beijing's most vital trade route? And can Delhi actually deliver on this promise? Let's break this down. When Prime Minister Narendra Modi landed in Jakarta, the headlines focused on defense deals, BrahMos missiles and critical minerals. But one proposal quietly stood above the rest. India offered to help develop Indonesia's Sabang Port. India and Indonesia have agreed to jointly develop the port that overlooks the Strait of Malacca, and it sits at the northern tip of Sumatra. It is close enough to the Malacca Strait to watch every ship that passes through. This is not about building another commercial harbour. This is about positioning India at one of the world's biggest maritime pressure points. And it is a part of India's Act East policy and Mahasagar vision to secure maritime security and trade. But the Sabang port development is not a new idea. Back in 2018, Indonesia's Maritime Affairs Minister had already floated giving India access to Sabang for military use. He'd even pointed out that the port has a depth of 40 meters, good enough for submarines. It just took years to move from an idea to a signed commitment. Now the Sabang Port Agreement gives India strategic foothold near the Strait of Malacca. And that one strait matters more than almost any other stretch of water in the world. The 900-kilometer Malacca Passage connects the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. It is the main maritime highway between West Asia, East Asia and the Pacific. A massive share of global trade moves through it. A massive share of India's imported fuel depends on it too. If the strait is important for India, it is existential for China. Beijing ships more than 70% of its imported oil through this route. If that route gets squeezed, China's entire energy supply chain will feel the pinch. Beijing knows this. That's why the strait is called China's Malacca Dilemma. And it's been a headache for Chinese strategists for decades. Small surprise that Chinese analysts are already flagging India's push near the strait, dubbing New Delhi as a maritime rival that could reshape China's access to the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asian sea lanes. India's Malacca Strait strategy does not focus on Sabang Port alone. The development connects to something much bigger on the Indian side, the Great Nicobar Island. India is building a massive air, sea and port complex there, including a new international airport and a deep-water seaport at Galatea Bay, positioned to become the country's biggest port. Great Nicobar sits only 175 kilometers from Sumatra, right at the western mouth of the Malacca Strait, an area also patrolled by the US 7th Fleet. Put Sabang and Great Nicobar on a map together and you get a Pincer coverage. India watching the strait from both sides. One from Indonesian waters, one from Indian waters, barely 100 miles apart. This is not happening in isolation either. India's diplomatic calendar this year tells its own story. Modi's visits to Indonesia and then to Australia and New Zealand comes right after outreach to Mauritius, Seychelles and Japan, all part of a broader effort to strengthen strategic security partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. India is leaning on its Andaman and Nicobar Command for direct oversight of the western approach to the strait, running joint patrols with Indonesia and Thailand and feeding real-time shipping data through its Information Fusion Center. India's Sabang Port move is not an act of confrontation, but strategies about options and about leverage and about signaling capability before a crisis even begins. China's rise has depended heavily on secure sea lanes. India is steadily positioning itself around those very routes. From the Arabian Sea to the Andaman Sea, New Delhi is building a network of partnerships instead of a network of dependencies. That is why Sabang matters. It is just a small port, but is also a big message. A message that India's maritime ambitions are growing, a message that the Indo-Pacific balance is changing, and a message that the Malacca Strait will no longer be viewed only through Beijing's lens.
If they had a nuclear weapon,
The old rules are breaking. Alliances are shifting.
Apologize again to the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
Wars are redrawing maps. Oil routes can shake economies overnight. One election in America can impact markets in Mumbai.
no tax on tips.
One move by China can alter the balance in Asia. One conflict in West Asia can hit every Indian household. This is no longer a distant story. This is our story. Your story. Because for the first time in decades, India is not watching from the sidelines. India is rising. India is negotiating. India is balancing rivals. India is building military strength. India is shaping trade routes. India is becoming central to the new global order. And yet, most global news is still told through someone else's lens. Washington's lens, Beijing's lens, London's lens. But where is India's lens? Where is the platform that explains the world from our perspective? Welcome to India's Axis, a new destination for geopolitics, strategy and power seen through India's eyes, from Neighborhood Watch to the biggest global stories that matter to you. Why tensions in the Taiwan Strait matter to India, how one move by China can affect India's security, what turmoil in Pakistan means for regional stability, how Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bhutan shape India's neighborhood, why oil choke points can hit your wallet, how wars abroad can reshape India's security. This is not noise. This is not shouting. This is not recycled headlines. This is sharp, intelligent storytelling. Daily explainers, war room analysis, strategic conversations. Because news is everywhere, but perspective is rare, and in the age of confusion, clarity is power. Axis is for the audience that wants more than headlines. The axis of global power is shifting. India is at the center of that shift. It's time the world was explained accordingly, to understand the world through India's strategic lens. Subscribe now.